The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor were too bright. Clinical. The kind of lighting that makes everything feel surreal, like you're watching your life happen to someone else. Min-jae stood frozen outside the doctor's office, holding a manila envelope with results that were supposed to be routine. A standard blood test after Jian's accident at school. Nothing serious, just a precaution, the nurse had said with that practice smile they teach in medical school. But the doctor's face told a different story. "Mr. Kong," Dr. Lee said carefully, glancing at me, then back at Min-jae. "Perhaps we should discuss this in private?" "My wife stays," Min-jae said. His voice was steady, but I could see his knuckles white around that envelope. Dr. Lee nodded slowly, adjusted his glasses, and said the words that detonated everything we'd built over the past 6 months. "This test shows a 0% paternal match." Silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind where your brain is screaming, but your mouth forgot how to work. Min-jae stared at the doctor like he'd spoken in a language that didn't exist yet. "That's not possible. I ran it 3 times to be certain," Dr. Lee continued, his voice gentle in that way doctors use when they're about to destroy your world. The blood type inconsistency from the emergency test was significant enough to warrant further investigation. The DNA analysis confirms that you are not Kong Jian's biological father. Through the small window in the door behind us, I could see Jian in the waiting room, laughing at something on Seo-rin's phone, his dinosaur backpack sitting at his feet, completely unaware that the adults in his life were standing in a hallway watching their reality crack down the middle. Min-jae's hand shook. The envelope fell, and I watched 6 months of careful family building, of fighting boards and press and public opinion, of learning to love a child who called me Auntie Ade with such trust. I watched all of it turn to sand. If you think you know where this is going, you don't. If you thought part 2 was intense, you have no idea what's coming. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story is about to destroy everything you thought you understood about love and family and blood. 2 weeks earlier, everything had been almost perfect. Almost is the word you use when you're afraid to say perfect out loud because you don't want to jinx it. But that's what it felt like. That fragile, precious thing we'd built after months of negotiation and compromise and choosing each other over and over again. Jian had started at Seoul International Academy 3 weeks ago. Min-jae drove him every Tuesday and Thursday, and I could hear them singing to K-pop in the car with the windows down because Jian insisted music sounded better that way. Seo-rin had the other days, and somehow, impossibly, the 3 of us had figured out how to co-parent a child who'd become the center of all our worlds. The estate felt different now, too. Min-jae's mother, I'd started calling her Halmione at Jian's insistence, had softened in ways I didn't think possible. I'd catch her smiling at Jian when she thought no one was watching, slipping him extra honey cakes when Seo-rin wasn't looking, teaching him traditional Korean customs with a patience I'd never seen her show anyone. "Your grandson is very smart," she told me one afternoon while we watched Jian and Min-jae build a Lego fortress in the garden. "He has the Kong intelligence." I didn't correct her, didn't point out that intelligence wasn't genetic inheritance. Because in that moment, watching her find joy in this child, watching the family finally accept something I'd fought so hard to protect, it felt like we'd won. The board had stabilized after Chairman Park's disgrace. Investors actually responded positively to Min-jae's family-first approach, spinning it as evidence of strong ethical leadership. Stock prices recovered and then climbed. The succession question was settled. Jian was heir, but protected from corporate pressure until 18, with legal frameworks ensuring he had choices. On the surface, we'd solved everything. That should have been my first warning. Life doesn't give you neat endings. It gives you breathing room before the next crisis. And if you're paying attention, you can feel it coming in the quiet moments when everything seems fine. The school event happened on a Tuesday. It was International Family Day, one of those wholesome school activities where parents come to campus and students show off their multicultural backgrounds. Jian had been excited for weeks because he got to present about both his Korean heritage and my Nigerian background. He'd made a poster with pictures of Seoul and Lagos, labeled in his careful 6-year-old handwriting. Min-jae had a board meeting he couldn't miss, so I went alone. I should have known something was wrong when I saw Jian's homeroom teacher, Ms. Park, waiting by the entrance with that expression teachers get when they're about to tell you something they don't want to tell you. "Mrs. Kong, could we speak privately?" My stomach dropped. "Is Jian okay?" "He's fine, But there was an incident during PE class. He fell from the climbing structure. Nothing serious, just some bruising and a small cut on his arm. But our policy requires that we send any injured student to the hospital for evaluation. I was already pulling out my phone to call Min-jae when she continued. The paramedics are with him now. His mother is already on the way. The hospital was 15 minutes away, but it felt like hours. I kept seeing Jian's face in my mind, his big eyes and that trust he'd started showing me. The way he'd grabbed my hand when we crossed the street, how he'd started including me in his bedtime prayers. And thank you for Appa and Yama and Aniade and Halmiani. When I got to the emergency room, Seo-rin was already there. Jian sat on an examination table, looking small in the oversized hospital gown, but he brightened when he saw me. Auntie Ade, I'm okay. I'm being very brave. You absolutely are, I said, crouching beside him. What happened, brave one? I was trying to do the monkey bars like the older kids, and I slipped. But I didn't cry. He said this last part with such pride that my chest ached. The emergency room doctor, a young woman with kind eyes, finished examining his arm. Everything looks good, just some bruising. But I want to run a quick blood panel to make sure there's no internal issues we can't see. Standard procedure for head-adjacent falls. He didn't hit his head, Seo-rin said quickly. I know, but the protocol is precautionary. Better safe than sorry. She smiled at Jian. You get to see your blood under a microscope. Pretty cool, right? Jian's eyes went wide. Really? 20 minutes later, a nurse drew his blood while Jian watched with fascination instead of fear. Seo-rin held his other hand, and I stood back, feeling that familiar pang of being important but not primary. Not his mother. Not even technically family. Just the woman who loved him anyway. Results should be ready in a few hours, the nurse said. You can wait, or we can call you. We'll wait, Seo-rin and I said simultaneously, then looked at each other. She'd been different lately. Softer. We'd never become friends exactly. Too much history, too much complexity, but we'd reached something like mutual respect. She'd even invited me to Jian's parent-teacher conference last week, including me in decisions about his education. I'll get us coffee, I offered. Make mine a double, she said with a tired smile. This kid is going to give me gray hair before I'm 40. That's when my phone rang. Min-jae, how is he? He's fine. Showing off his Band-Aid to the nurses. They did a blood test just as a precaution. I'm leaving the meeting now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. But it was the doctor who arrived first. Dr. Lee. Calm. Professional. Asking to speak to us privately. We left Jin with a nurse who was showing him pictures of blood cells on a tablet, and followed the doctor to a small consultation room that smelled like antiseptic and bad news. The blood panel came back normal, he started, which should have been the end of it. But there was an irregularity in the blood typing that concerns me. Seo-rin straightened. What kind of irregularity? Jin's blood type is O positive. According to his medical records, his father is listed as AB negative, and you're B positive. Silence while we both processed what he was saying. That's not genetically possible, Dr. Lee said gently. An AB parent cannot produce an O child. It's basic genetics. The room tilted. Seo-rin's face went white. There must be a mistake. The records are wrong, which is why I wanted to speak to you before raising any alarms. Medical records do contain errors, but I have a responsibility to flag genetic impossibilities, particularly when they appear in a patient's file. He paused. I would recommend confirming paternity with a proper DNA test. That's not necessary, Seo-rin said, but her voice shook. Min-jae is his father. The family registry confirmed it. There was already DNA testing done. When? I asked quietly. She looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in Seo-rin before. Fear. 7 years ago. When he was born. She stopped. Started again. I had the hospital run a paternity test because I wanted legal documentation. In case Min-jae's family ever tried to claim Jin wasn't his. I needed proof. And the results? Showed 99.9% probability that Min-jae was the father. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, scrolling frantically. I have the documentation. It's right here. Look, she showed us a scanned document on her phone. Official letterhead from a Seoul hospital. DNA paternity test results. Kong Min-jae listed as alleged father. Kong Jian's child. 99.9% probability of paternity. Dr. Lee studied it carefully. This appears legitimate. But blood types don't lie, and this is a fundamental genetic impossibility. I would strongly recommend retesting. That's when Min-jae walked in. He took one look at our faces and went still. What's wrong? Nobody wanted to say it. Nobody wanted to be the one to speak the words that would detonate what we'd built. So Dr. Lee did it for us. And now we're standing in this hallway, and Min-jae's world is ending. And I can see Jin through the window still laughing, still innocent, still believing his father is the man who's been teaching him to ride a bike and doing silly voices during bedtime stories. This is impossible, Min-jae said again. The family registry automatically confirmed paternity when he turned 6. There was medical data, DNA matching through archived hospital records, which I would like to examine, Dr. Lee said carefully, because either those records are in error or something else is going on. But the blood test doesn't lie. Scientifically, you cannot be this child's biological father. Seo-rin made a sound like something breaking. I never cheated. I never. Min-jae, you have to believe me. I was pregnant when we divorced. You're the only person I'd been with. The only. I know, Min-jae said, but his voice was hollow, like he was speaking from very far away. I know you didn't cheat. Which means, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to, because we were all thinking the same thing. If Seo-rin didn't lie, and the hospital blood test doesn't lie, then someone else did. Comment below if you've already figured out who, because I was about to learn that some lies are so big, so carefully constructed, that they can fool entire families for years. The drive back to the penthouse was silent. Jin had been discharged with instructions to rest and avoid climbing for a few days. Seo-rin took him back to her apartment, promising to keep him distracted while we handled some boring adult paperwork. He'd hugged me goodbye, making me promise to bring more chocolate next visit, completely unaware that the adults in his life were fracturing. Min-jae drove like he was on autopilot, hands at 10 and 2, eyes on the road, face completely blank. It's the blank ones you have to worry about. The faces that show nothing because there's too much underneath to process. We got to the penthouse and he walked straight to his home office. Pulled out files I didn't even know he kept. Documents from 7 years ago. The divorce papers. Seo-rin's medical records from when she'd left Seoul. What are you looking for? I asked from the doorway. Proof that this is wrong. That the hospital made a mistake. That? He stopped, staring at something in the file. What? The family registry notification. When Jin turned 6. He pulled out the official document, the one that had started this entire nightmare 6 months ago. It says the paternity match was confirmed through archived medical data from Seoul National Hospital. Right. But Seo-rin didn't give birth at Seoul National. She left Korea before Jin was born. He was born in Singapore. The implications hung in the air between us. So the registry matched his DNA to what exactly? I asked slowly. To whatever data was in the system under my name. Min-jae's hands were shaking now. Someone had to submit that data. Someone had to verify it. Someone had to. His phone rang. The caller ID showed his mother. He stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Put it on speaker. Min-jae. Her voice was calm, controlled. The same voice she used at board meetings when she was about to make a move nobody saw coming. I hear there was an incident at Jin's school. Is the child all right? How did you know about that? Min-jae asked quietly. The school called me as an emergency contact. I am his grandmother, after all. A pause. Is everything well? No. Min-jae's voice was ice. Everything is not well. We need to talk. In person. Tonight. I'm afraid I have dinner plans. Cancel them. He hung up before she could respond. I stared at him. You think your mother knows something. I think my mother knows everything. He stood up, started pacing. She had access to the family trust. She had connections at every major hospital in Seoul. She was the one who received the original registry notification. She was the one who verified everything before telling me. But why? Why would she fabricate paternity results? Because she needed an heir, a voice said from behind us. We both spun around. Seo-rin stood in the doorway of the penthouse. She must have followed us. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp. Calculating. How did you get in here? Min-jae demanded. Halmiani gave me a key card months ago. For emergencies. She walked into the office like she owned it. And this qualifies. Because I've been thinking about what the doctor said, and I went back through my old records, and I found something you both need to see. She pulled out her phone again. But this time, instead of the paternity results, she showed us a different document. A letter. from Seoul National Hospital. Dated 6 years and 2 months ago, right when Jian would have turned 6. This arrived at my London address, Seo-rin said. I thought it was junk mail at first. A request to update medical records for the family registry system. It asked me to provide a DNA sample from Jian and mail it back for verification purposes. Did you? I asked. No, because I'd already done paternity testing when he was born. I had proof, so I ignored it. Her hands were shaking now. But if I didn't send his DNA, and the registry still processed a match, then someone else provided that data. The three of us stood there, the truth assembling itself like a puzzle we should have seen months ago. Chairman Park had been pushing for Jian's integration, demanding corporate photo ops, insisting on succession security. But it had been Min-jae's mother who'd first presented the DNA evidence to the board. Min-jae's mother who'd controlled access to the family medical records. Min-jae's mother who'd had the most to gain from a legitimate heir appearing at exactly the right moment to stabilize the company after the divorce scandal. She forged it, Min-jae said quietly. My mother forged the paternity results. But why? Seo-rin asked. If I never cheated, and you're not the biological father, then who? She stopped. Her face went absolutely white. What? I pressed. There was someone else. Her voice was barely a whisper. Not an affair. But there was medical intervention. Before you and I got married, Min-jae, remember how we struggled to conceive? The doctors said your sperm count was low. Motility issues. Min-jae nodded slowly. We tried for 8 months. The doctors recommended IVF or possibly a sperm donor. And I said no. Because you said your family would never accept a child that wasn't your biological son. That bloodline was everything. Seo-rin's eyes were distant now, remembering. So we kept trying naturally. And then I got pregnant. The doctors said it was a miracle. Low probability, but possible. Except it wasn't a miracle, I said slowly. Was it? Seo-rin shook her head. I went to a fertility clinic. One your mother recommended. They said they could help increase our chances. Hormone treatments. Timing optimization. I trusted them. And you think they used donor sperm without telling you? Min-jae's voice was hollow. I think your mother paid them to use donor sperm without telling either of us. To ensure an heir was produced. To secure the bloodline. Seo-rin looked at him with eyes full of old pain. I think she's been controlling this from the beginning. And when I divorced you and took Jian, she lost her heir. So she waited. Bided her time. And then when the family registry system gave her the perfect cover story, automatic paternal verification at age 6, she fabricated the DNA match to bring him back. The room felt like it was spinning. 6 months of building trust. Of fighting boards and press and family. Of learning to love a child. Of watching Min-jae become a father. Of how Miani softening toward her grandson. All of it built on a lie. Not Seo-rin's lie. Not Min-jae's. But his mother's. We need proof, I said. This is all theory. We need evidence. The original fertility clinic, Seo-rin said. Seoul Wellness Center. It was in Gangnam. They would have records. My mother would have destroyed them, Min-jae said. She's too careful for that. Maybe. But she's also arrogant. I was thinking out loud now, pulling threads. She thinks she's won. That the Chairman Park exposure means you're focused on the board, not on her. That we're all too busy being a happy family to question how we got here. The DNA lab, Min-jae said suddenly. The one that processed the family registry match. They would have records of who submitted the samples. Authentication protocols. Chain of custody. Can we get access? Seo-rin asked. I'm still CEO. I have legal authority to request family medical records for audit purposes. He was already pulling out his laptop, especially after the Chairman Park embezzlement. The board mandated complete financial and administrative transparency. Medical records fall under administrative. He started typing, making calls, pulling strings. And 90 minutes later, we had our answer. The DNA samples submitted for Jian's family registry verification had come from Seoul National Hospital, as claimed. But they hadn't come from archived records. They'd been submitted fresh, 6 years and 3 months ago, by a hospital administrator named Lee Jin-suk, who happened to be Min-jae's mother's first cousin, and who had retired from the hospital 3 weeks after submitting the samples, with a severance package triple the standard rate, paid for by the Kong Family Trust, authorized by the trust administrator, Min-jae's mother. She paid her cousin to fabricate the match, Min-jae said. His voice was dead. She found some DNA, probably a relative, someone with enough genetic markers to show family connection, and submitted it as mine. The system processed it, sent the notification, and she controlled the narrative from there. If you're feeling that cold horror right now, that betrayal that cuts deeper than any romance drama, hit that like button. Because we were about to confront a woman who'd been playing chess with her grandson's life for 6 years. The Kong estate had never felt more like enemy territory. We showed up at midnight, unannounced. Min Jae used his key to get past the gate security, walked through the gardens like he owned them, which technically, he did, though his mother had always acted like they were hers by divine right. The main house was dark except for one room. Her study. Of course she was still awake. Women like Min Jae's mother don't sleep well. They're too busy planning their next move. Min Jae didn't knock, just opened the door. She sat at her desk, reading something on a tablet, wearing a traditional hanbok despite the hour. She looked up without surprise. "I was wondering when you would come," she said calmly. "You knew?" "I knew the blood test would reveal inconsistencies eventually. Medical science has gotten quite sophisticated. But I had hoped we would have more time to establish the family bond before the biology became relevant." She set down her tablet. "Would you like tea?" "I want the truth." Min Jae's voice was shaking. "All of it. From the beginning." She sighed, stood up, moved to the tea service like this was a normal family visit. "You were going to lose the company," she said, pouring water with steady hands. 7 years ago, the board was losing confidence. Your marriage was falling apart. There was no heir. The Kong bloodline, which had controlled Kong tech for 3 generations, was about to end with you. So you decided to manufacture one. I decided to ensure continuity. She poured 3 cups, offered them to us like poison disguised as hospitality. None of us took them. The fertility clinic had donor samples from appropriate bloodlines. Men with the right education, the right genetics, the right family connections. I selected one personally. Made sure the clinic used it without informing you or Seo Rin. A medical miracle, they called it. Seo Rin made a sound like she'd been punched. You violated me. You let me believe I was carrying my husband's child when you were carrying a Kong heir. That's what mattered. Halmiani's voice was cold. And Min Jae was going to raise him as his son regardless. What difference does biology make when you're building legacy? What difference? Min Jae's voice was barely controlled. You built our entire family on a lie. You let me believe Jian was mine. You watched me fall in love with him. You watched me fight the board to protect him. You watched. I watched you become the father you needed to be," she interrupted. "You think biology makes family? Blood makes you care? You loved that boy before you knew the truth, and you'll love him after. That's what makes you his father. Not DNA. That wasn't your choice to make. It was exactly my choice to make. I am the head of this family. I protect the bloodline. I ensure succession. That is my role." She finally looked at me. "You understand, don't you? You, who fought so hard to be part of this family despite having no blood claim. You know that family is about more than genetics." I stared at this woman who'd softened toward me over the past months, who'd called me daughter-in-law with something almost like respect, who'd taught Jian traditional customs while smiling at his mispronunciations. And I saw her clearly for the first time. Not a grandmother who'd learned to love, but a strategist who'd been playing a longer game than any of us realized. "Family is built on truth," I said quietly. "And you built this one on lies. I built this one on necessity." She turned back to Min Jae. "What will you do now? Tell the board? Destroy the succession plan? Announce to the world that the heir isn't your biological son? Watch the company collapse? Watch Jian's life explode? You're threatening me with my own son." Min Jae's voice broke on the word son. "I'm reminding you what's at stake." She moved closer. "That boy loves you. You love him. Seo Rin trusts you. Your wife has accepted him. The family has embraced him. The board is stable. Everything we fought for has been achieved. And you want to destroy it over biology?" "Over lies," Seo Rin said. "Over violations. Over the past," Halmiani interrupted. "What's done is done. The question now is what you do with the truth. Do you tell Jin his father isn't his father? Do you tell the board they backed the wrong heir? Do you tell the world you've been deceived?" She let the questions hang in the air, and I realized she was right about one thing. The choice we made next would determine everything. Not just for us, but for a 6-year-old boy who'd already had his world turned upside down once when he learned his dead father was alive. What would it do to him to learn that father wasn't really his father at all? Subscribe right now because the choice Min Jae makes next will break your heart. and it's not the one you're expecting. The silence in that study felt like drowning. Min-jae stood there, and I watched him age 10 years in 10 seconds. Every calculation running through his head was visible on his face. CEO brain-fighting father, heart-fighting man who'd built his entire identity on honor and truth. I need time, he said finally. Time for what? Halmini asked. To think. To process. To figure out what the hell I do with this. He looked at Seo Rin. We both need time. Jian doesn't have time, his mother said. Every day you wait is another day this secret spreads. Dr. Lee knows. His staff knows. How long before it reaches the press? Before someone sells this story to the highest bidder? Is that a threat? I asked. That's reality. She looked at each of us in turn. You have 48 hours before this becomes uncontrollable. I suggest you use them wisely. We left without another word. Drove in silence back to the penthouse. Sat in our living room at 2 a.m., Seo Rin on one couch, Min-jae and I on the other, all of us staring at nothing. I can't tell him, Min-jae said finally. I can't look at that boy and tell him I'm not his father. But you're not, Seo Rin said. Her voice was hollow. Biologically, you're not. And he deserves to know the truth about his own life. He's 6 years old. What does truth mean to a 6-year-old? What matters is who shows up. Who teaches him to ride a bike? Who reads bedtime stories? Who, his voice cracked, who loves him? Your mother is right about one thing, I said quietly. Both of them looked at me. This will get out. Medical records leak. Hospital staff talk. Someone will sell this story. And when they do, Jian will hear it from strangers or headlines or playground bullies. Not from us. So what do we do? Seo Rin asked. I thought about Jian. About his dinosaur backpack and his careful handwriting. About the way he'd started calling me Auntie Ade with such trust. About Min-jae teaching him to swim, patient even when Jian got water up his nose and cried. About Seo Rin braiding his hair before school every morning, singing off-key while he wiggled. About the family we'd built despite everything. We tell him the truth, I said. But we tell him our truth. Not the biology. Not the DNA. We tell him that family is complicated. That sometimes the people who love you aren't the ones you're related to by blood. That his Appa chose him. Chose to be his father even when he didn't have to be. He won't understand, Min-jae said. Not yet. But he will. And when he's older, when he can handle the complicated parts, we tell him the rest. But right now, I looked at both of them. Right now we tell him that he's loved. That he's wanted. That nothing about how he came to be changes how much we all want him in our lives. And the board? Seo Rin asked. The succession? The company. That's where it gets complicated, Min-jae said. He'd shifted into CEO mode. I could see it happening. If this leaks, the board will panic. They'll see it as succession fraud. The stock will tank. Everything we built will. Then we get ahead of it, I said. We control the narrative. Again. How? I stood up. Started pacing. Thinking out loud the way I did when I was problem solving. Your mother was right about one thing. What matters is the family you build, not the one you're born into. So we make that the story. We announce publicly that Min-jae is adopting Jian. Legally. Officially. We make it a choice, not a deception. The board will ask why, Seo Rin said. Why formalize what they think is already biological fact? Because, I said slowly, the idea forming as I spoke. We're setting a precedent. We're saying that Kongtaek's future isn't about bloodline. It's about commitment. That succession isn't about who you're born to, but who you choose to raise. That family is. More than genetics, Min-jae finished. He was staring at me with something like awe. We're attacking the bloodline hierarchy directly, using our own situation to redefine what the Kong legacy means. It's a huge risk, Seo Rin said. Conservative investors will hate it. The traditional family board members will. We'll have to adapt or leave, Min-jae said. Because we're not doing this their way anymore. We're doing it ours. He stood up, pulled out his phone, started making a list. We need lawyers, adoption papers, a press strategy, a board presentation, and we need it all before my mother can move against us. She'll fight this, Seo Rin warned. Let her. Min-jae's voice was steel. She built her empire on control and secrets. We're building ours on choice and truth. Let's see which one survives. For the first time since the hospital, I saw hope flicker in his eyes. Not the naive hope of thinking everything would be easy. The stronger kind. The hope that comes from knowing exactly how hard something will be and choosing to do it anyway. There's one more thing, I said. The DNA. We need to know who the biological father actually is. Not for Jian, at least not now, but for medical history, genetic conditions, things he'll need to know when he's older. The fertility clinic, Rin said. They'll have donor records. Your mother will have destroyed them, Min-jae said. Maybe, but donors leave paper trails, medical screenings, consent forms. Someone, somewhere, knows who this man is. I looked at them both. And eventually, Jian will want to know. We owe him that information. When he's ready, Min-jae agreed. When he can understand the complexity. So we're really doing this? Rin asked. Fighting the entire family system? Redefining succession? Adopting him publicly? Yes, Min-jae and I said simultaneously. She studied us for a long moment. Then nodded. Then I'm with you. Whatever you need. We protect him. Together. And there it was. The three of us. Min-jae's ex-wife. His current wife. And the man in the middle. All choosing the same thing. The child who'd brought us together and now needed us to hold together. Comment below if you think we're being naive. Because honestly, I wasn't sure either. But sometimes you don't need certainty. You just need courage. The next 48 hours were a blur. Lawyers. So many lawyers. Immigration attorneys for international adoption protocols. Family law specialists for domestic rights. Corporate counsel for board disclosure requirements. Paperwork that would make Jian legally Min-jae's son, regardless of biology. A press strategy that framed the adoption as strengthening family bonds rather than correcting a lie. A board presentation that repositioned succession around leadership qualities rather than bloodline. And through it all, Jian stayed with Rin, carefully shielded from the chaos, watching his cartoons and building his Lego sets, completely unaware that every adult in his life was rebuilding his world from the ground up. We'd tell him soon, when the legal pieces were in place, when we had language he could understand. But first, we had to survive the board meeting. It was scheduled for Friday morning. Emergency session. Every board member present. Min-jae's mother in the front row, her face carved from ice. Min-jae stood at the podium. I sat in the back, where I'd sat so many times before. But this time, Rin sat beside me. Allies in the most unlikely way. Thank you all for coming, Min-jae began. I've called this meeting to announce a significant personal decision that affects corporate succession planning. The room went still. As you know, 6 months ago, I publicly acknowledged my son, Kang Jian, as heir to Confronting. That announcement was made in good faith based on information I believed to be accurate. His mother's face didn't change, but I saw her hand tighten on her armrest. Recent medical tests have revealed that I am not Kang Jian's biological father. Chaos. Shouting. Questions. Cameras flashing. How had press gotten in here? Min-jae held up a hand. Waited for silence. However, he continued, his voice carrying over the noise. Biology does not determine family, and it will not determine succession. What are you saying? One of the board members demanded. I'm saying that I am adopting Kang Jian. Legally. Officially. Making him my son by choice, not by accident of genetics. And I am maintaining him as heir to Confronting, with all the legal protections we previously established. That's not how this works. Another board member protested. Succession is about bloodline. About family legacy. Succession is about leadership, Min-jae interrupted. About training. About values. About choosing to carry forward a vision. All of which can be taught. All of which I will teach my son. This is unprecedented, his mother said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. The board will never accept. The board will accept what I present, Min-jae said. Because I'm offering them something stronger than bloodline. I'm offering them certainty. A child being raised specifically for leadership. Not by accident of birth, but by intentional design. Not because he happened to share my DNA, but because I'm choosing to invest everything in making him the leader this company deserves. He pulled up a presentation. Charts. Data. Research on adopted heirs and family businesses. Success rates. Loyalty metrics. Leadership outcomes. He'd done his homework. Studies show that chosen heirs, those who are deliberately selected and trained rather than assumed by birth, have higher success rates in family business transitions. Why? Because there's no assumption of entitlement. No expectation that the position is theirs by right. They have to earn it. And that creates better leaders. He clicked through slides showing major Korean conglomerates that had succeeded with adopted heirs. Japanese companies, Chinese firms, global corporations that had shifted from bloodline to meritocracy. What I'm proposing isn't radical, he said. It's strategic. We're moving Kongtech from a bloodline-dependent model to a leadership-dependent model. And we're starting with my son, who I am choosing. Deliberately, publicly, permanently. The room was silent now. Everyone calculating, thinking through implications. This is all very moving, his mother said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But it doesn't change the fundamental question. Who is the biological father? What family does this child actually come from? What bloodline is the board actually investing in? And there it was, the trap she'd been waiting to spring. Because if the biological father was lower class, or had genetic conditions, or came from the wrong family, or, God forbid, wasn't Korean, the conservative board members would riot. Min-jae smiled, and I realized he'd been waiting for this question. The biological father, he said calmly, was a carefully vetted donor from a reputable fertility clinic. Medical screening confirmed excellent genetic health. Educational background includes 2 advanced degrees. Family history clean of hereditary conditions. Which means, from a purely genetic standpoint, my son has excellent biological foundations. Who vetted this donor? The board member pressed. Seoul Wellness Center, one of the most prestigious fertility clinics in South Korea. The same clinic that many board members' families have used over the years. Pin drop silence. Because now he was implying that half the room might have used donor assistance. That their own precious bloodlines might be less pure than they claimed. Brilliant. The question before this board, Min-jae continued, is not whether my son has my DNA. It's whether you trust my judgment. Whether you believe in the leadership training I will provide. Whether you want a company built on genetic lottery or one built on intentional development. And if we vote no, his mother asked, then I resign. Immediately. And you can explain to shareholders why you tanked a stable succession plan over genetics. He pulled up one more slide. Stock projections, market analysis, investor confidence ratings, all showing positive trends since the original heir announcement. The market likes stability, he said. They like the story we're telling. Family values, long-term planning, leadership development. You can maintain that narrative with my legal adoption, or you can create chaos by rejecting it. Your choice. The vote was closer than I'd liked. But we won. 14-8. Enough to move forward. Enough to make the adoption legally recognized by the board. Enough to keep Jian as heir. As we filed out, Min-jae's mother appeared beside me. You think you've won, she said quietly. We've survived, I corrected. That's all we're trying to do. Survival isn't victory. She looked at me with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. You've made enemies today. Powerful ones. Board members who will wait for you to fail. Who will watch that boy for any sign of weakness. Who will use every mistake as evidence that bloodline matters. Then we'll make sure he doesn't give them ammunition. He's 6 years old. Children make mistakes. That's what they do. And families protect each other, I said. That's what we do. She studied me for a long moment. You really believe you can redefine how family works in Korea? I believe we can define how family works for us. And maybe that's enough. For the first time in all the years I'd known her, I saw something like respect flicker in her eyes. My son chose well when he married you, she said. Even if I didn't see it at the time. And your grandson is lucky to have you as Halmiani, I said. Even when you're terrifying. She almost smiled. Almost. Tell Min-jae I expect him for tea on Sunday. With Jian. We have traditions to maintain. We'll be there. She nodded once. Then walked away, her hanbok swishing with each step, still regal, still powerful, but maybe, just maybe, starting to understand that power came in different forms than she'd always believed. That evening, we sat Jin down. All 3 of us. Min-jae, Seo-rin, and me. In the estate garden where he loved to play, with the late afternoon sun making everything golden, and his Lego fortress half-built beside us. Jian, we need to talk to you about something important, Min-jae started. Am I in trouble? His eyes went wide. No, baby, you're not in trouble, Seo-rin assured him. But we need to explain something about families. Okay. He was wary now. 6-year-olds can smell serious conversations coming. You know how some families look different? I asked. Like how your friend Emma has 2 mommies, and Kai lives with his grandparents, and Hiro's parents are divorced, but still friends? Yeah. Ms. Park says families come in all shapes. Exactly. And our family has a special shape too. Min Jae crouched down to his level. You know how you call me Appa? Because you're my Appa. I am. I'm definitely your Appa. But I want to make that extra official. So I'm going through something called adoption. Which means the government will give us special papers that say I'm your dad forever and ever. That I chose you. That I want you to be my son. But I'm already your son, Jin said, confused. You are. But sometimes families do extra steps to make sure everyone knows how much they love each other. And this is one of those steps. Will I get to keep my name? Absolutely. You'll still be Kang Jin. Nothing about you changes. This is just about making our family official. And I still get to see Yama and Aniade and Halmiani. Every day, Seorin promised. Then okay. He shrugged, because at 6, this was far less interesting than the Lego spaceship that needed completing. Can I have cake to celebrate? And just like that, the conversation that had consumed days of legal work and board meetings and soul-searching was over in 2 minutes. Because to him, family was simple. It was who showed up, who played with him, who made him feel safe. Everything else was adult complication. Later, after Jian went to bed, after Seorin went home, after Min Jae and I finally collapsed on our couch, he turned to me with eyes that held 1,000 emotions. Thank you, he said. For what? For not leaving. For not walking away when this got complicated. For choosing us. Choosing him. I chose you the day I married you, I said. And I chose him the day I met him. Everything after that was just details. Complicated details. The best things usually are. He pulled me close, and we sat there in the soul night. 2 people who'd survived more than most marriages face, holding each other and hoping, desperately hoping, that the hardest part was behind us. We were so wrong. Hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you next will show you that sometimes, the truth you uncover reveals an even bigger lie hiding beneath it. 6 weeks passed. The adoption was finalized. Jian officially became Kang Jian, son of Kang Min Jae, in legal documents that meant more than biology ever could. The press had mostly moved on to other scandals. Kang Tech stock stabilized. Board members stopped giving us suspicious looks. We'd survived. We'd won. We'd built a family out of chaos and choice and sheer stubborn determination. I should have known it was too easy. I was at the estate garden with Jian on a Saturday morning. Seorin had a work conference. Min Jae was handling CEO duties, and I'd volunteered for garden time because Jian wanted to plant flowers for his Iyama's birthday. That's when I found it. Hidden in Halmiani's study, where I'd gone to borrow some gardening books she'd mentioned. A drawer that wasn't quite closed. And inside it, a folder marked Private Family Medical Records. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have looked. But something about the way it was hidden, not locked away in the safe where important documents belonged, but tucked in a drawer like it was meant to be found, made me suspicious. Inside was a document I recognized. The original DNA paternity test from 7 years ago. The one that showed 99.9% probability that Min Jae was Jian's father. The one we all knew was falsified. Except, I looked closer. The letterhead was different from the one Seorin had showed us. This one was from a different hospital, a smaller clinic in Busan. And the date was different too. Not from when Jian was born, but from 2 weeks ago. I stopped breathing. This was a real test. A recent test. Comparing Min Jae's DNA to Jian's current DNA. And it showed 99.9% probability of paternity. Which was impossible. Unless the blood test at the hospital was wrong. Or unless someone had switched the samples. Or unless. You weren't supposed to find that, Halmiani's voice said from behind me. I spun around. She stood in the doorway of her study, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. This test, I said, holding up the document with shaking hands. This is recent. This says Min Jae is Jian's father. But the hospital said. The hospital was given incorrect information, she said calmly. Deliberately. By who? By me. The room tilted. You told Dr. Lee that Min Jae's blood type was AB negative when it wasn't. You created a genetic impossibility where none existed. You made us think. You made us believe. I couldn't finish the sentence. I made you fight for him, she said. Made Min Jae choose him. Made you build a family based on choice instead of biology. Made you all prove that blood didn't matter. Why? Because it does matter. She moved into the room. Blood matters in Korea. In family businesses. In succession. And I needed to know, I needed everyone to know, that Jin was strong enough to survive even if the bloodline was questioned. That Min-jae loved him enough to claim him regardless. That you would stand by them. That Seo-rin would protect him. This was a test. The words came out hollow. The whole thing. The hospital inconsistency. The DNA questions. All of it. All of it. She took the document from my hands. And you passed. All of you. You proved that family is choice. That succession can be about leadership instead of genetics. That the Kong legacy is strong enough to adapt. People don't get to be tested like this, I said, my voice rising. Children don't get to have their entire world questioned as some kind of character assessment for the adults around them. And yet, everyone is stronger for it. She met my eyes. Jin has 3 parents now who chose him deliberately. Min-jae has legal adoption papers that mean more than any DNA test. The board accepted succession based on merit instead of blood. And you, she studied me. You proved you're not just a foreign wife trying to fit in. You're a mother, choosing to stay even when it was complicated. I should tell Min-jae, I said. I should tell him you manipulated all of us. You should, she agreed. But you won't. Why not? Because telling him serves no purpose except punishment. The adoption is finalized. The board has voted. The family is built. What does it matter now whether the test was real or not? The truth matters. Does it? She tilted her head. Or does love matter more? Does choice matter more? Does the family you built matter more than the deception that built it? I stared at this woman who'd played puppet master with all our lives. Who'd orchestrated pain and doubt and crisis. Who'd bet on our love being strong enough to survive her manipulation. And who'd been right. If I ever find out you're lying about this test, I said quietly. If I find out Min-jae really isn't Jin's biological father and you're covering it up with another forgery. The test is real, she interrupted. I hired 3 independent labs to confirm it. Min-jae is Jin's biological father. The fertility clinic never used donor sperm. The pregnancy was natural. The only manipulation was making you think otherwise long enough to prove that biology didn't matter. Why tell me? Why show me this? Because someone needs to know the truth. Someone needs to carry the weight of what I did. And I chose you. She put the folder back in the drawer. You're stronger than you think. Strong enough to keep this secret. Strong enough to let your family have their hard-won peace. Strong enough to understand that sometimes love is built on the choices we make after the crisis, not the truth that caused it. She walked toward the door. Paused. Jin is waiting for you in the garden. He wants to show you the flowers he picked. And she left me standing there, holding a truth that changed everything and nothing. Min-jae was Jin's father. Always had been. But we'd built our family believing he wasn't. And that belief had made us stronger than biology ever could. The question was, what did I do with this information? If you think I'm going to tell you right now, you don't understand how these stories work. If you want to know what I chose, if you want to know whether I kept the secret or revealed it, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because this is where everything you thought you knew about this family gets turned upside down one more time. I walked out to the garden in a daze. Jin was there, his small hands covered in dirt, holding up a handful of yellow flowers. Auntie Ade, look, these are called forsythia. Halmione taught me. I knelt down beside him, looked at his face, Min-jae's eyes, Seo-rin's delicate features, and something entirely his own. Innocence, joy, trust. They're beautiful, I said. We're making a garden for Iyama's birthday. Yellow is her favorite color. I know it is. Will you help me plant them? I looked back at the house, at the study window where I knew Halmione was watching. She'd tested us all, proven that we'd fight for this child regardless of biology, manipulated us into building something real out of manufactured crisis. And now she'd given me a choice. Tell the truth and potentially destabilize everything we'd built. Or keep the secret and let the family we'd fought for remain built on the choices we made, not the genetics we'd questioned. Auntie Ade. Jin's voice pulled me back. Are you okay? I looked at this child. This 6-year-old who called me auntie with such trust. Who'd survived being told his father was dead, then alive, then maybe not his father after all, then legally adopted. Who'd weathered more family chaos in 6 months than most people faced in a lifetime. And who was still here, planting flowers, trusting us to hold his world together. I'm perfect, I said, taking his dirty hand in mine. Let's plant these flowers. Because here's what I understood, standing in that garden. The truth Halmiani had given me didn't change anything that mattered. Min-jae loved Jian. Jian loved Min-jae. Seo-rin trusted us to co-parent. The board had accepted adoption over bloodline. We'd chosen family over genetics. And that choice, that deliberate, hard-fought choice, was stronger than any DNA test could ever be. Whether the test was real or falsified didn't matter. What mattered was that we'd proven we'd stay regardless. So I made my choice. I planted flowers with Jian, and I never told Min-jae about the document in his mother's drawer. Some truths are meant to heal, and some truths are meant to stay buried. The question is knowing which is which. If this story broke you, if you understand what it means to choose family over biology, to build love out of chaos, to decide that some secrets are worth keeping, drop a comment below. Hit that like button if you believe that the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. And subscribe because love stories shouldn't just be about romance. They should be about the impossible choices we make to protect the people we love, especially when those choices mean carrying truths we'll never share. 3 months later, Jian's 7th birthday party filled the estate garden with children's laughter. Min-jae grilled meat at the barbecue, Seo-rin organized games, and I supervised the cake table, while 7-year-olds ran wild through the gardens that used to feel like enemy territory and now felt like home. Halmiani sat on the veranda, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. At one point, while Jian was distracted with his friends, she gestured me over. "You never told him," she said. Not a question. No. Why not? Because you were right, I admitted. Love matters more than truth. Choice matters more than biology. And the family we built matters more than the deception that built it. Do you resent me for the manipulation? I thought about it honestly. Yes, but I also understand it. You needed to know if we were strong enough, if the family could survive scrutiny, if the love was real. And it's real. I watched Min-jae lift Jian onto his shoulders, both of them laughing. We chose each other. Every day, in every crisis. That's more real than any DNA test. She nodded slowly. You've become what I hoped you'd become. A mother to my grandson. A partner to my son. A member of this family. I was always those things, I said. You just needed to see it. Perhaps. She smiled faintly. Or perhaps you needed to prove it to yourself. Before I could respond, Jian called out. Auntie Ade, come see. Appa says I can cut the cake. I looked at Halmiani one more time. The secret stays buried. Forever, I confirmed. Good. She stood up, adjusting her hanbok. Then let's celebrate this family we've built. Despite everything. Because of everything. And we did. We celebrated a 7-year-old boy who had 3 parents who'd chosen him, a grandmother who'd fought for him in her own twisted way, and a family that proved blood was just biology. Love was choice. And we chose each other. Every single day. Even the complicated ones. Especially the complicated ones. If you made it this far, if this story hit you in the chest and made you question everything you thought you knew about family and truth and love, thank you. Subscribe because stories like this need to be told. Comment below with what you would have done with Halmiani's secret. And like this video if you believe that sometimes the strongest families are the ones we build, not the ones we're born into. I married a Korean CEO. His ex walked back in with a son that wasn't his, except he was. We fought boards and press and family politics and our own doubts. And somewhere in that chaos, we built something real. Not perfect, but real. And that's enough. That's everything.